Fired and broke at 50, I muttered, staring at the grease-stained uniform that felt heavier than my own skin. My fingers trembled around the pizza box, the steam rising through the cardboard, carrying the smell of cheese and burnt crust. This wasn't supposed to be my life. I used to have an office, a view, a future. Now I had a second-hand Toyota that rattled like it was begging for mercy. It was my third delivery of the night. An address in the wealthy side of town, the kind of neighborhood I used to drive through when my kids were small, promising them we'd live there someday. That dream had vanished with my job, my marriage, and the dignity I used to mistake for security. I parked outside a mansion that looked like it had been carved from pure arrogance. Every window glowed like gold. I checked the order, straightened my cap, and walked up the path lined with manicured roses. When the door opened, the man standing there didn't look like anyone I'd ever met. He was calm, composed, wearing a tailored suit that probably cost more than my old car. His smile was unsettling, not friendly but knowing. "Pizza?" I asked, trying to sound normal. He looked at me for a moment too long, then said quietly, "You're worth $823 million. For a moment I thought I'd misheard him. Then I laughed awkwardly. "Buddy, I think you've got the wrong guy. I'm just here with your order." He didn't smile back. "No mistake," he said, reaching into his pocket. He handed me a small envelope. "You've been looking in the wrong places for too long." I froze, staring at the envelope in my hands. "What is this?" "Proof," he said. "Of what's yours?" Then, without another word, he took the pizza and shut the door. I stood there dumbfounded. The night air felt suddenly colder, pressing against my neck. I got back into my car and sat for a long time, staring at the envelope on the passenger seat. My heart pounded as I tore it open. Inside was a single piece of paper, an official-looking document with my name printed at the top. A bank statement. The balance read, $823,462,101.73. I blinked hard, my breath catching in my throat. Some kind of scam. It had to be. But the account number, something about it tugged at a memory. I'd seen it before. Years ago, back when I still had access to the company's financial system. That's when the first chill of recognition hit me. Before I was fired and broke, I'd worked 27 years for a firm called Asterion Holdings, a shadowy investment company with roots deeper than anyone dared question. My mentor, my friend, was the CFO, a man named Gerald Huxley. He was sharp, ruthless, and always insisted I was part of the family. Until the day I discovered the missing money. $800 million had vanished through shell accounts and offshore transfers. I confronted him, shaking, terrified. He smiled then, almost pityingly, and said, "You don't understand how this world works, Thomas. Some of us are just stewards of other people's power." The next day, security escorted me out. Fired. Accused of embezzlement. My pension frozen, my name blacklisted. My wife left within months, saying she couldn't live with a disgrace. That was 3 years ago. Now, sitting in my car with the envelope trembling in my hands, I realized the account number on the paper was one of the offshore ones I'd flagged back then. Except now it was tied to my name. I drove home in silence, every thought colliding in my skull. Maybe it was a setup. Maybe Gerald was still playing games. Maybe I was going insane. At home, I poured myself a glass of cheap whiskey and opened my laptop. The account was real. The balance was real. The transfers, all from Asterion subsidiaries, had been made over the past 6 months. Why now? Why me? Then I noticed the note typed at the bottom of the statement. "It's your turn to decide what justice looks like." I didn't sleep that night. The next day, I drove back to the mansion. But the house was empty. No cars, no lights, no trace that anyone had ever lived there. When I asked the neighbor, she said it had been vacant for years. That's when the real fear began. Over the following week, I received no calls, no letters, just silence. But everywhere I went, I felt watched. Cars idling too long near my street. A shadow lingering at the edge of the grocery store parking lot. My phone would ring once, then stop. By day 5, I was unraveling. I went to the bank, demanding to speak to a manager. When I handed her the account details, she froze. "Sir," she whispered, "I need you to come with me." She led me to a small office. Inside waited 2 men in dark suits. One of them closed the door behind me and said, Mr. Callahan, we've been expecting you. Expecting me? I stammered. I just want to know what the hell this account. He cut me off. That account represents restitution. The funds were transferred under legal directive by a former executive of Asterian Holdings. My pulse quickened. Gerald. The man nodded. Before his death last month, he left instructions. He called it, making things right. Death. I whispered. Apparent suicide. But he wanted you to have what was yours. He said you were the only honest man he'd ever ruined. The room spun. For years I'd imagined confronting him. Screaming, demanding answers, maybe even forgiveness. Now he was gone, and all he'd left was blood money and ghosts. Why me? I asked, my voice shaking. The man regarded me with something that looked almost like pity. Because you kept the files, Mr. Callahan. Because you never sold your silence. I stared at him, realization sinking in. The drive I'd hidden years ago, the one with records of Asterian's illegal dealings, was still in my attic. Gerald must have found out. And now he was dead. When I got home, I tore through boxes until I found the old hard drive. Dusty, forgotten. I plugged it in. There they were, thousands of documents, names, accounts, offshore transfers, proof of everything. That night, as the city lights flickered outside, I stared at the glowing balance on my computer screen. $823 million. Enough to buy silence. Enough to bury the truth forever. I poured another drink, hands trembling. Maybe this was his way of buying forgiveness. Maybe he'd known the only way to set me free was to make me complicit. Outside, a car idled for too long again. I closed the blinds. My phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Don't make the same mistake he did. Keep it quiet. My blood ran cold. For a long time I sat there, staring at the money that had destroyed everything it touched. Then I opened a blank email, attached the files, and began typing addresses to journalists, investigators, prosecutors. When I hit send, I knew what it meant. They'd come for me next. But for the first time in years, I felt something like peace. I turned off the lights, looked around my small apartment, and whispered into the silence. Justice, Gerald. That's what it looks like. Outside, the engine revved and drove away. The night was quiet again. Somewhere in the darkness, a storm was finally beginning.